typing because they're doing something in there, I'm assuming. I'm hoping they're doing something in there to improve the show, because otherwise I've seen what I got written down and it's not looking frump. Darn you. See, I didn't say the bad word. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Keith Explains. It's another Thursday. We have a huge audience again, so we're going to get straight to our topics. I was mentioning this show is not going to be the best because I've only had a Coke and a half, and so my brain's really only running at about, 2/3 of normal speed. And I've been really busy lately, so I haven't been thinking of things. And generally, I think... Anyway, first thing, I'm sure you've all noticed by now, you probably called the kids in from the other room. You're like, what's up with his hair again? As you know, I normally go get my hair cut at Supercuts, and I give them $14, and I say, I'd like it shorter, and they cut it, and I'm happy with it for a while. But I've never really liked getting my hair cut at Supercuts because it seems kind of chainy. And I've always thought I'm a guy I should go to a barber to get my hair cut. And I blame this on Andy Griffith. Because Andy Griffith used to have a TV show where he was a sheriff, and right next to the jail was the barber. And so Andy Griffith would get his hair cut like every day. Like if Andy Griffith was bored, he'd go over and Floyd the barber would cut his hair. And hilarity would ensue. And really, from a TV perspective, they use it as another scene, a place to meet some more characters on a regular basis. And they'd go in, they'd talk about things. But when I was young, I thought that you got your hair cut like every third day. Because, of course, he was constantly getting his hair cut. Anyway, so, I've been going to Supercuts, don't terribly like it. But there's this place near my house that opened. It says Barber. And so I thought I should go there and get my hair cut. Run by a nice man named Israel, I believe. Israel, something I can't pronounce. He has an accent. I don't know what kind of accent, but it's the kind of accent where you might name your child Israel. And here's the thing, which I didn't realize is different between Supercuts and barbershops, which is barbershops, I'm assuming, are designed for men. So they follow all the guy rules, which is there's no subterfuge in guy rules, right? You say something, you do it, whatever. Supercuts is, I assume it's a place girls go and get their hair cut. So there's always a give and take. See, what you don't realize is you're really always at war with the people in Supercuts. Which is, you, of course, want to get your hair cut as efficiently as possible. And that means you don't want it cut terribly often. You don't want to be paying to get your hair cut every 3 weeks. They want to cut your hair, but they don't want to cut so much of your hair that you don't need to come back for a while. Which is, they want to cut off the minimum amount of hair that will make you feel like you've gotten your hair cut. Well, you want them to cut off the maximum amount of hair that could get cut off without making you look dumb. See? So somewhere between those two numbers is where you generally end up. And so I have learned what words you tell the person cutting your hair to kind of land me somewhere between those two numbers, which is I go into Supercuts and they say, how would you like your hair cut? And I say, short. And then they say, off the ear. And I say, yes. And then they say, part on the left, and I say, yes. And then they say, take off your glasses. And then I always remember to say, don't cut the stuff in front, it doesn't grow. Because it doesn't grow, okay? This hair here is 9 years old. Okay? I have named them. I have given individual names to these couple hairs because they don't grow anymore. And for God's sakes, if she cuts them, they're not coming back. And I'd have to have a funeral. Camera one. Man, I looked at the wrong camera. What was I thinking? I know what I was thinking. It's ungodly dark in here, and I can't actually see where John is pointing because John decided to wear a black sweater tonight. It's green, but it looks black. So John is a black blur on a black... Okay, so I went to the barber, and it hadn't occurred to me that I need to use different language, that I needed to use guy language in a barber shop. So he said, how would you like your hair cut? And I said, short. And he said, part on the left. And I said, yep. And then he said, off the ears. And I said, yes. And he said, anything else? And I said, don't cut the stuff in front. He said, I know. And then he cut my hair. But he actually cut it short. Like really ungodly short for what I'm used to. And near the end, he's like, would you like me to trim your eyebrows? And I was like, sure. It's the same money. I mean, I've never had my eyebrows professionally trimmed before. So perhaps I've been missing something. And then he took the little buzzy thingy and he went, and for a brief instant, I was terrified that I had no more eyebrows. But I still had eyebrows, although a moderate amount of them were gone. I wouldn't call them trimmed short, but they were trimmed. I had this flash. When I was in college, the guy in the dorm room next to me got really drunk one night and shaved his head. I don't know why he thought to shave his head. I know alcohol was involved, and apparently he thought it was a good idea, but he not only thought, I'll shave my head, apparently he was drunk enough that he thought, well, now that I've shaved my head, those eyebrows are just really standing out. So he continued and shaved his eyebrows off. So the guy next door to me, the eyebrows tell your brain where to stop when you're looking at someone. Like you look at their nose and then kind of your eyes make a little circle and then you're like, well, there's the face. I recognize that guy. But with no eyebrows, your eyes kind of look at the nose and they start making the spiral out because they're looking for something to stop on. And like you could no longer focus on him for a while until the eyebrows grew back in. Which, let me tell you, takes a long time compared to regular hair. I mean, this guy had a head of hair again, and he had like 4 eyebrow hairs. That's the haircut story. So I'm hoping by January that I'm back to an ordinary length of hair. Now, it was a great haircut, except that, again, since it was short, what I have learned about my hair is my hair does not like to lie in any particular pattern. So the thing that keeps my head looking not like a total disaster area is gravity. Which is the hair gets long enough and then it kind of has to lay flattish. Whereas when it's short, it can just do whatever it wants. And it had a little party. I had a little hair party on my head for a while. Anyway, I wasn't really even supposed to talk about the haircut tonight, but I remembered it on the way over, and I was sure you people were going to mention it. So please don't fill the comment board with talk about the hair again. Speaking of that, where the new website is up, we've started to get a lot of people loving it. We've added actual comments to the show. So, you know, before we had the wiki, and we had the people that did the transcriptions, and there was the mailing list, of course, where people argued about the minutia of what I had discussed in the previous month's show. Now we've got the comments on the blog posts, and I think it might work a little bit better. Please feel free to let us know by going to the website, www.keithexplains.com, and taking a look around. One of the things that we added to the new website is off on the right, you'll see the Keith Explains Twitter feed. Because as you know, we're huge on Twitter. Pretty much it's that guy that was on Star Trek, and then it's John Cleese, and then it's us in terms of popularity, now that Lindsay and Miley have deleted their accounts. We used to be number 5, but then Miley deleted her account, and that bumped us up to number 4, and then Lindsay went crazy and sold her account to a guy in Nebraska, and then everyone stopped following him. So now we're up to number 3 on the Twitter feed. Although CNN is getting close to us, apparently people would rather hear about the news than the latest from Keith Explains. So on the Twitter, as you know, I tweet frequently details of my life. Most of them are lies. And I have to be very careful when I tweet lies because they have to be ungodly, outlandish, otherwise people think they're true. And mostly the people that think they're true are the people on Facebook. Because my Twitter feed posts to Facebook. And so I will say the most outlandish, crazy thing on Twitter, like, I'm taking a hot air balloon to the TED conference in Colorado. That's not correct. TED's in Monterey or something, but it was some other conference. The World Affairs Conference, I believe. I'm taking a hot air balloon to the World Affairs Conference. And then I would tweet about how there was an incident with a hot air balloon and a plane, but that it will get covered up because it happened over Area 51 in Nebraska. And everyone on Twitter gets that I'm totally lying. And when I'm totally lying, it's always exactly 140 characters long, because if you're going to lie on Twitter, you may as well make it difficult to yourself by forcing you to lie in 140 character increments. When that gets posted to my Facebook page, people read it and then post supportive comments underneath it. Like, I hate it when my travel plans get disrupted. Or, you should take a plane. Denver's a nice airport to fly into. Or, all kinds of things. Please, people, if I have tweeted it, it's probably a lie. And if it's not a lie, it's essentially a bad tweet from my perspective. Anyway, in addition to tweeting, I, of course, also follow a bunch of people on Twitter. I don't know why. The cool kids told me that's what I should be doing, and so I do. I follow people I don't actually know. I follow people just because other people talk to them a lot, and so I'm like, what are these people talking about? And so I will add people and follow them, and after a while I'll forget why I added them, but I'm still listening to them. So, like, I'll be sitting at my desk and someone will tweet, like, I'm at Apple this week. Anyone want to have lunch? And I'll be like, sure, I'll have lunch with you. And then they'll be like, okay, I'll be in the cafeteria at 1. And I'll be like, who is this guy? I don't think I actually know this guy. So I went to lunch and I'm like, hi, I'm Keith. Who are you? He's like, I'm this guy from New York. And I'm like, how do I know you? He's like, I don't know, you're on Twitter. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm in New York. I write iPhone games. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. What are they? And then he tells me. And then I'm like, cool. He's like, do you want free codes? I'm like, sure. I'd love free codes for your games. Guy I've never met before, whom I'm having lunch with. I'm also following a porn star. Specifically, I'm following Katie Morgan. Again, I don't know why. I think I was just reading something somewhere and it said, Katie Morgan tweets. And I'm like, I wonder what a porn star would say on Twitter. She talks about her dogs a lot. She's like, I'm taking my dogs for a walk. And I'm like, oh, that's good to know. Porn star's taking her dogs for a walk. Guess she's not making porn right now. Unless it's really gross porn, which I don't want to think about. She's taking her dogs for a walk, or... And then, you know, she occasionally's like, oh, I just got back from the vet. One of my dogs has liver cancer. And I'm like, oh, that's sad. I'm like, I'm sad for a porn star who I don't know, who doesn't know me's dog. This is kind of strange from my perspective, because it's like I'm all emotionally verklempt for someone I have no connection to whatsoever. Oh, something else. You may have noticed this, people out in the podcast. I don't know about people watching on actual TV, because I don't think there are any of you. But now we're broadcasting in Dolby 3.1. So in addition to the fabulous visual effects and the widescreen, of course, we've got the Dolby 3.1 surround sound. So, you know, turn the lights down, crank the stereo up, get ready for the neighbors to pound on the wall because it has gone entirely too loud. Let me say, I guess I'll try to keep it down so that we don't go totally crazy and get you kicked out of your apartments. Here's something someone pointed out to me the other day. I like to think of myself as kind of a geek, kind of a hip geek, into the social networks, into the geek. not a bad geek, not like a hacker, but just a nice, friendly neighborhood geek type guy. And then it occurred to me that, truthfully, I'm totally failing at being a geek in all the measures of appropriate geekdoms. So, like video games, I have, as you know, and as all geeks do, I have a Wii and an Xbox 360 and a PS3. And I also, of course, have a PS2 and a regular old Xbox and a bunch of other video games. But since the TV's only got like 5 video inputs, I have had to take some of the old games and put them in the attic. I can't get rid of them because Lord knows someday I may want to go back and play them. I don't know when this will be because in a couple years I won't be able to buy a TV that still has a composite in, which is what all the old video games put out. But this is immaterial because they're not that large, and I have a big attic, and so it's full of old video game systems. I even have a stand-up arcade game at work that doesn't work, but that I can't get rid of because I know that I could fix it. And so it could work, and therefore it would be wrong to throw away. Anyway, on the topic of video games, I know as a geek I should be playing video games, so I buy them. But I never actually really make time to play them. So they just kind of sit there for a while until they're too old to play. And then they generally get covered with newer video games, which I also don't play. For example, I don't even remember the names of all of them. I mean, I bought the newest Katamari game, which I've played a few times. It's fun. You roll things around while the Japanese king of the universe insults you, which I think is just two of the things a good video game should have is an insulting king of the universe and a sticky ball which you can use to roll things up. But I bought Fallout 3 and haven't opened it yet because when I bought it, someone told me it was a good game, but now I can't remember who or why they told me it was a good game, so I haven't actually played it yet. I have a couple games for the 360 that I think are still in the saran wrap, which will be great when I want to get rid of them, because I'll be able to say, mint. And people will be, how do you still have a mint copy of Fallout 3? And I'll be like, well, I never got around to playing it. And they're like, are you sure you're an actual geek? I have the same with computer games. I have bought games for my computer and left them in the pile of games to play, unopened, so long that they no longer run on my computer. I bought this game called Stubbs the Zombie, which only works on PowerPC machines, and I put it in my pile of games to play, and then eventually I got rid of the last PowerPC machine in my house before I had opened the game to play it. So now I'm like, Stubbs the Zombie, man, it's just before Halloween, that'd be fun to play, and I was like, oh, darn. I should have played this 4 years ago when I bought it. Here's the last example. This is what actually, clued me in, and I'm failing my geek cred. I get a lot of email because my address has been out there a long time, and I like signing up for mailing lists because it lets me know people love me or at least want to talk near me, and that's often enough. But when you get a lot of email, you can't actually afford to read it all because you'll never get anything done. So after I signed up for all the mailing lists and everything else, I wrote a very elaborate set of mail filtering rules that ran in a .procrc file on my mail server host, which would take all of the incoming mail and filter it into the right folder so that I could ignore it, but still know that it was there and that I was thus loved. As an example, years ago I thought, hey, I should build a Myth TV box, so I signed up for the Myth TV mailing list, which apparently has about 100 messages a day, and it has for the past 4 years. Which I know because when I went and looked, my Myth TV mailbox had, 97,000 unread messages in it. And I say when I went and looked because the place I do my email changed the way they do things a couple months ago, and my Proc RC no longer works. So all of a sudden, all my mail started showing up on my mailbox. And in particular, I started getting 100 messages a day about Myth TV. And I was like, where did these come from? How did I get on this list? Before it occurred to me to look and see if they had just been magically filtering themselves. And they had 97,000 of them. So I had to quick unsubscribe from that list because I couldn't delete messages fast enough for how quickly they were sending it to me. Now, I say I'm failing my Geek Cred because I then had this idea, well, I will write, a program to filter my mail. I'll get the Ruby and it'll log on and it'll do some very elaborate, very complicated, very things. It'll be great. But I haven't done it. So now what I do when I look at my mailbox is I go delete, 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 delete. Command Z. I shouldn't have deleted that one. Up arrow. Delete, 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 delete. Delete, delete. Okay? I don't know how the rest of you do it out there. People that have to actually read all the email people sending you instead of just filtering it to the right mailbox so you can conveniently ignore it. Halloween party. We had the Halloween party last week. Those of you that know me were invited. Those of you that think that you know me because you watch me on TV weren't invited. Because I don't know you. You know me, kind of, because I'm on TV and therefore vaguely famous. Speaking of which, I don't want to forget this. Okay? Paper. That underneath. Okay? I'll give him a chance to zoom in. All right? Kathy Griffin, the official book club selection. She wrote a book, and you're like, yeah, what do you care, Keith? Watch. I'm going to turn to page 308, and I'm going to read a brief bit of the Kathy Griffin book. From Kathy. Dated December 11th, 2007. To was. Subject, last night. Did you go to your Monday night supper club last night? They seem like good company. Kathy Griffin. Okay? That's us. That's me. In particular, see, I have this supper club that my friend John set up, and that since I started going has become popular. All right, maybe other people going actually made it popular, but I was there at the beginning, so I call it my supper club. Kathy Griffin was referring to our supper club because we met Kathy the Friday before. So we made it into a book, an actual hardcover book, which I can't because it's not allowed, but someone out there in Fanland could go to my Wikipedia page, and they could now mention that Keith is a good friend with Kathy Griffin. And then it wouldn't be me doing it, so it's not editing your own page, but it is documented in a real book. Now, sure, it doesn't mention me by name, but I think you could cite this show as a source for how Keith vaguely knows Kathy Griffin. And then I could put up a photo of me with Kathy Griffin, although it's a little blurry. Because we only had the one camera, and she was busy, and we were taking pictures. And so the picture with me is just blurry. It's like the picture of me with my Emmy, which if you go look at the website, there's a picture of me holding my Emmy. And it's a little blurry. And everyone says, Keith, it's so easy to tell you photoshopped yourself into a picture with that Emmy because it's blurry. And I'm like, no. I photoshopped the background out of that picture. It's actually a picture of me holding an Emmy at Apple, but I wanted to look all show busy, so I put in the glittery curtain behind it. But since the guy that took the picture was in a hurry, he didn't bother to focus the camera. So I look blurry, holding an actual Emmy in my hands. And everyone who sees it is like, oh, you photoshopping moron, you don't know how to do anything. When I'm just a guy with a friend who doesn't know how to focus. Where was I? Ah, yes, the Halloween party. So we had the Halloween party. It went well. Unlike last year, there was no excess of alcohol in the punch incident. I think the punch was lovely this year. Thank you very much. I made it. On the plus side, no one died, which is really always one of my prime goals for a party. We did have one drunk guy who, at the end of the party, we were like, you shouldn't be driving. He's like, I'm fine. And we're like, I don't think you're fine. I've watched enough cops to know if they pulled you over, you would not be in the, sorry to bother you, sir, you can go. You would be in the, please get in the back seat, sir. We're going to have your car towed pile. But he's like, no, I'm fine. And so we're like, okay, tilt your head back, close your eyes, touch your nose, touch your nose. He couldn't do it. He's like, no, really, I'm fine. And I'm like, I don't think you're fine. He's like, trust me, I'm fine. And then he finished his beer. If someone wonders if you're drunk, you shouldn't finish your beer in front of them, because it's just a dead tip-off that made his wife drive him home. And I haven't heard of any deaths on the highway in the last day and a half, so I think he made it. What else? Here we go. I got 2 minutes, so okay. I've been cleaning the house a lot lately because I want to pay a guy to scrape all the popcorn off my ceilings, and apparently it has to be empty for that. And so I have to have my garage clean so I can move my house into my garage so the guy can scrape the popcorn off the ceiling so I can move the house back in, so I can move the garage back into the house. Truthfully, it's a huge mess. But as part of this, I discover I have things in my house. Lots of things. I have a huge number of things in my house. And some of them, after I have picked them up to move to my garage, it occurs to me, I don't really want this thing. The only reason I have it is I couldn't be bothered to move it from where it had been left the last time. So instead of putting it in my garage, what if I just put it out in front of my house, and then I will go to FreeCycle and I will say, I have this thing, it's in front of my house, you can come have it for free. And then it'll go away, and then I'll be happy, because then I won't have to move it back into my house after I'm done. So I thought this was a great idea, so I put a bunch of things up on FreeCycle, I put them in front of my house, and I waited for people to say, hey, I would like this thing, and then I would go, it's in front of my house, here's the address, come get it. And then I did this, and then a lot of people emailed me. They were like, I would love to have those milk glasses, those milk glass dessert cups. I'm like, okay, here's my address, come get them. And then nothing would happen. And then a day and a half would go by, and someone would email me, go, I'd love to have those. And I'd go, great, here's the address, come get them. And then they'd reply, okay, I'll be by tomorrow. And then tomorrow would come and go, and nothing would happen, and there would still be milk glasses in front of my house. And for a while, I was like, I cannot give crap away. I can try, and people can tell me they want my crap, but I'm out of time. Okay, next time, everyone. We'll see you later. I didn't even get to have these things. So sad. And I never got to talk about the elastic